The Fitness Movement is brought to you by ZOAR Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all one place, ZOARFitness.com. We got an exciting announcement. Day's going to be starting a new podcast, and we're going to be publishing it to the Fitness Movement platform. It's going to have its own name, show art, all that stuff. We're still figuring out the name, but yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a new format that we really haven't done, and like new opportunities for learning for the people who are listening, which is going to be, yeah, a good opportunity that's a little bit different from what you've probably heard out of us. So big picture, Jay, what's sort of like your intentions with the show?
Yeah, this show, like the way I was thinking about it is to bring more education on everything health and fitness related outside of the CrossFit realm. So in the CrossFit, if you're an athlete or a coach, there's a lot of things that you're good at understanding or doing. I know that CrossFit's big, obviously, on Olympic weightlifting, and increasing endurance if you're doing a lot of zone 2 work, interval training, all those things. But there's like a whole different world that I think is untapped in the CrossFit realm. And that these are things that I get exposed to all the time working in the collegiate setting with different sports, and a lot of my coworkers picking their brains, and also in the strength and conditioning research side of things. So just thinking about all this stuff, I was thinking about how like different the worlds are. So I'm luckily like I have a lot of resources in the CrossFit space, working with ZOAR and Ben and all that, and picking his brain. And then on the collegiate side of things, all the coworkers I have, also with the degree I'm pursuing in exercise physiology. So kind of merging those two and finding those.
Yeah, give us a quick life update on where you're at with schooling.
Yeah. So I what's today? Today's mid-August. So in 2 weeks, I start my PhD in physiology, specifically exercise physiology.
You
And
need to bring back your old Instagram handle, Day the
yes, I
Fitness
know.
Nerd.
Yeah, bring that back. So right now,
Maybe
like,
that'll be the show name.
oh, hey, yeah, there we go. Yeah, and if anyone has any ideas on show names, that'd be awesome because I'm not good at this creative stuff. But yeah, so like that's where part of this came up too. The idea of this was working with this summer I did a few lab rotations, and I worked in certain labs that were looked at more like endurance work, some that looked at neuromuscular physiology. And like if you look at my desk, like I have just a stack of like research papers. I'm just
I was gonna
constantly
say the
like,
broken tennis racket in the background.
yeah, no, that's just one of our athletes who's a
They got
monster.
mad.
Yeah. I think the coach who works with her, I think he had her sign it too. Um, but yeah, so like all the research papers, and like there's all these things that I think would be useful to CrossFit, but we don't implement it. And I think it's not because a matter of it doesn't work in the CrossFit space. It's a matter of it hasn't been exposed to the CrossFit space. So through this platform, I just kind of want to give all the tools that I learn and pick people's brains and kind of bring it over and kind of marry the two.
Hmm. Are you thinking more like technology things, like things that like are measuring recoverability, or like other, like you talked about, like force plates when you're here at Lumber Capital, and that kind of thing, or like more like training, like protocols and tools that way?
Both. So I
Yeah.
know like at work, I do a lot of like the sports science work in the department. And so the technology stuff, it's cool, but it's also not accessible to everyone. Like you don't go
Right.
to like a
Yeah.
CrossFit gym, is like, oh, there's force plates, there's a force frame, and velocity-based training, although it would be extremely useful,
Right.
especially in this sport. Um, but there's other technologies that most people have, like wearable sensors and whoops and heart rate straps and all that. But there's also a lot of, I think, protocols and like strength training progressions and tools that we can use in the sport that I think is hasn't been really talked about or is kind of untapped, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that, even for people who, they might listen to like a research-based podcast, and they're like, well, I don't have access to force plates or blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you know, 10 years ago, people probably didn't have access to like accelerometers the way they do now for like, velocity-based training and things like that, which is now it's like becoming like super accessible to people. So I think also like if you pay attention to what's being, what the best are doing and like what they're using and like what is being researched right now, then it's like that'll slowly trickle its way down to the masses where it becomes much more affordable for like, like our average listener, for example.
Right, right. And yeah, and like I was saying before, I think there's a big divide in the two, right? Like in the strength and conditioning realm, there's a lot of things that I realize like, oh hey, these athletes could benefit from it. And it's something that we do often in CrossFit and vice versa, right?
Mm,
Like, oh, these CrossFit athletes would benefit from it and we're not doing it, but it's something we do often with athletes of all other sports. So why aren't we, where's the bridge to connect those gaps?
mhm. Yeah. Do you got any particular training modalities that could like come to mind or like protocols or things along those lines that like just give us a little teaser, like anything that comes to mind when it's like people should be using this, but they're not.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that actually my coworker, and I share this office with him. He sits right over here. He's been teaching me a lot of stuff throughout the year, and I just like kind of see what he's doing. And I think a lot of stuff is pretty cool. And it has to do more with like neuromuscular
Mm,
things and like warm up protocols and all that. And he's taught me a lot about that. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. Like, why aren't people using this? Like, I've never seen it. And it's something that's super simple to do. And like, why aren't we looking at it? And then once he kind of introduced me to that, I started getting into like neuromuscular research and all that. And did like a small rotation at a lab on campus, and the professor was someone who did a lot of strength training research on the neurophysiology side. And he was giving me all this background. And I'm like, why aren't we paying attention to this? It's so powerful. So
mm,
there's that stuff. And then also, I think just a lot of one of the other professors I was working with, and I'll be working with again the beginning of this semester, does a lot of endurance work and does a lot of cool protocols and all those things. So I'm like, cool. So like again, why isn't this something that's like common knowledge? It's very easy to do and it's super accessible and it's like, why hasn't it been popularized amongst the masses? So
yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That'll be really yeah, interesting. I mean, again, I think anytime people can get kind of outside their bubble, their sphere of like things that they typically listen to. And again, coming from someone who also understands like who our average listener is and like what makes them tick and like what, they're excited about, and then also kind of introducing a little bit of new is going to be good. So, are most of these going to be like interview style shows? What's the plan with that?
Yeah, mostly interview style shows. I already have a list of people that I would like to talk to and all that. And then also some things that I've learned through research that I'll probably just like talk about in a short, like 20, 30-minute podcast.
Short
Short,
20,
short,
30,
short
60 minute
quotations.
podcast.
Me just like citing different research papers for 20, 30 minutes, but or things that I've learned and just kind of doing that. But I like to hear other people speak and subject
Yeah,
matter experts speak and I listen. So that would be the preferred method of disseminating the information.
awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for it. It's also cool because people have gotten to know you a lot better just because you've been on a lot of our shows. So it's like at this point, people are familiar with you and you've already got the audience. So I hope it takes off to the degree it should because I think it's going to be awesome. So
Yeah, I think most people have realized I'm not much of a talker, especially in like our name game videos and all that. So the
Chris and
podcast will
I are
kind
always
of be,
asking Day questions in our
yeah.
recording because we're like, Day, you got to talk.
I'm like, oh, they did a great job. So the podcast hopefully will be formatted that way where I could get people to talk a lot about what they do
Yeah.
and stuff that they love doing and all that, share their passion, and I get to listen and ask questions.
In your defense, though, you also are much better in the one-on-one setting. It's like when you're in a group, that's when you start,
Yes, yes. And
closing down a
that's
bit,
something,
which is understandable.
yeah, I always get that. I get that feedback a lot too.
Also, Chris and I have been like we're doing those for how long now? So we're both like, generally I'm not a very outgoing person unless it comes to like talking about CrossFit, then people can't get me to shut up, which is like so typical about anyone within CrossFit. Like you can't get them to shut up about it. And then Chris is obviously he's
He's
Chris.
high energy.
He's high
Yes.
energy. That's a great
Yes.
way to describe him. So
Yeah.
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 It'll be you're leading the show, so it'll be yeah, you'll get your thoughts out. It'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting.
Awesome.
Be
Well, yeah,
fun.
if people got you know interviews that they want to hear, like people that they want to hear from, topics that you're interested in learning about that's a little bit more, yeah, like detailed or research based or anything along those lines, that might kind of fit this show really well. Send them over today. What's your Instagram handle, Day?
Oh man, I think it's just my full name, which is pretty long actually. Let me just make sure it is.
I think
Yep.
it's Dayannara.Muñoz, right?
Yep. Dayannara.Munoz. Dayannara.Munoz. I should
Instagram
probably
doesn't
change it.
have tildes.
Yeah, they don't. So I have to just use a normal and sad.
Not very inclusive Instagram.
Yeah, it really isn't.
Well, yeah, we'll leave it
Well,
there. Again, if people got other follow-up things, reach out today. She'll be there for you. But yeah, we'll start releasing shows probably the week after this airs. So
yeah,
stay tuned.
cool.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.